Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sharpe Takes, Season 2, Episode 4, I believe. And it's glad to have you watching. Today, I'm honored to have a guest, the representative from this district, the Addison 4 district, Representative Herb Olson, who served on the Commerce Committee, who serves on the Commerce Committee, and notably in his past for 15 years served as legislative counsel for the legislature, so has a much broader understanding of what goes on than your typical legislator, which is great. And I'm excited to have Herb here today. Thanks for joining us, Herb.
Well, I'm real happy to be here, and it's a good opportunity, I think, to talk to folks out there about what's going on.
Yes. So first off, what is going on with education? So locally, and also there's two study committees going on the state level. So can you update us on those?
Yeah, sure. So the big deal, the last legislative session was the passage of what's called Act 73. And that started in motion a series of events and sort of stages to really think about how we're handling, how we organize education, and how we finance education. So it was a big deal. Not everything's taking place right away. In fact, some of the major pieces that are going on now are studies, and I know studies, legislative studies can have a bad connotation, but it's a complicated subject. So I certainly understand that there are two studies that are going on. One is a redistricting task force, and I can talk a little bit about that. And the other is actually an existing commission, but they've been given a new charge. It's a long name. Commission for the Future of Public Education in Vermont. I'll just call it the commission.
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk a little bit about what they're doing? So the task force, the redistricting task force, was charged by Act 73 to start thinking about organizing our school districts into larger entities, organizations. And so that's what they're doing. During the legislative session, there were a lot of sort of hot flashpoints about a lot of things, but one of them had to do with whether these larger districts would be organized as a supervisory district, which sort of generally says you have a district, you have one board, you have one superintendent, and they're in charge of everything that goes on in that district, including closing schools. Then there's the other sort of side of that was a lot of schools in Vermont, particularly in the eastern part of the state and the southern part of the state, are organized as supervisory unions.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to keep their structure. They thought it worked pretty well. In the supervisory union, you have a central office that handles a lot of the administrative works, but the actual policy-making decisions are left to local boards. And in many cases, in much of Vermont, they're town boards. So this task force is charged with, imagining boundaries, if you will, for these larger districts. And inevitably, I think they're going to get into this discussion about supervisory districts versus supervisory unions. So it's a very interesting subject. I think we talked before, Dave, about my own thoughts about that.
Yeah.
Which is, right now, we're sort of beyond having a supervisory union type of structure with, Bristol having its own school district.
Here on the western side of the state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're really beyond that. And in Addison County, we have the MAUSD district. We got the district in Middlebury and Virgins. And let's not forget Hannaford. Their school district in Addison County, too. And so
Lincoln. And Lincoln.
I forget, not to forget Lincoln.
Yeah.
They have some very, they have some very strong views about that.
Yeah.
They've got their own school. They got their own district.
And they use vouchers for beyond elementary school.
They send their kids mostly to Mount Abe, high school and middle school. But yeah, they have that program.
Well, they don't send them. The students choose.
Yes, that's true.
And right now, the vast majority of students choose to go to Mount Abe.
Correct.
And whether that stays going forward is hard to know.
Yeah, it is.
Because each child each year gets their choice. Right?
Yes, that's correct. So my whole thought was, geez, do we want to be a part of Rutland? Do we want to be a part of, CVU? Wonderful school district, but is that kind of the same kind of culture that we got in Addison County? I mean, it's a big, here we are in Northeast Addison County. We go down to Orwell. There are differences here, but it still feels a little more commonality.
Yeah.
So my thought had always been, geez, let's take that. If we have to do a larger district, why don't we use a county kind of structure and do it for the existing districts and Hannaford. Hannaford needs to be part of the system, and they're a little bit separate. So I think this is a real opportunity to do that.
So I'm in accord with that piece, especially. I think that having been a career and technical education teacher for 20 years, and the barriers of that exist for a student to choose to go to a tech center rather than staying in a traditional academic school are huge, and the biggest of the barriers is money, because money follows the student. So every student who chooses to leave Mount Abe and go to Hannaford Tech Center takes 20 grand with them, give or take. So you have 10 Mount Abe students go down to the Tech Center. There's 200,000, and that's a advanced calc class, or something.
It creates a lot of tension.
Yeah.
It creates a lot of tension, and that we don't need. Certainly these days, we don't need. There's enough tension and controversy going on. So so I'm thinking, that kind of a Addison County unit. I would prefer to see the umbrella be a supervisory union, handle the central office stuff, allow for better coordination with folks, but still keep those existing districts, right? Mount Abe, I guess a classic thing is Middlebury, their high school, maybe it's throughout all the grades. They do an international baccalaureate kind of curriculum. Right. That's important. Virginians and our folks, don't do that. I think there's some really important, you got to engage with your community in order to have a successful system. And you have to have bonds of trust. And I think it's difficult to do that. The larger the organization, I think it's difficult to do that. So my vision would be you can still keep those districts, but operate under a supervisory union where you can have some cost savings at the central level.
So
plus, it would also allow for folks who care about their community elementary schools to have that, the structures and voting rights we built into the districts would be much more easily maintained.
I am told that that's similar to the BOCES model that's being used in New York State. I'm not very familiar with that. Do you have a level of understanding, or is that something I need to find somewhere?
Well, there's lots of literature about it. Yes, it did originate in New York. And it, roughly speaking, I think it's the same kind of thing. The only thing with Apaches is that it requires a new board kind of thing. And you'd have to elect members to it and such. And maybe that's a good thing, but maybe it's, an added complexity. Who knows? Whereas if you just said, okay, supervisory union, it actually might be a little more streamlined, I think, than Abachi's, but I don't know, probably don't know enough about it to say. It's the same concept, though.
So I think it seems to me, Ben Kinsley was here on the show from Campaign for Vermont,
Yes.
which is generally a pretty conservative organization, and
Well, it's business oriented, yeah.
yeah, and myself, and now what you mentioned, seems to be there's sort of a consensus building around tech center focused school districts or supervisory unions or BOCES or however the details work out. But that sort of seems to me working in that direction. Is that the kind of thing you hear about what's happening at the committee that's setting these new districts?
The task force.
Yeah.
The redistricting task force. So I haven't actually had the opportunity to participate in the sense of being on Zoom and, listening to everyone, but I've been trying to keep abreast of minutes, the things that they produce. And they haven't made any decisions. But they are definitely talking about stuff like that. And they've been talking about, they're asking the right questions. They're asking about, for example, could a county district operate in an SU structure, right? So they're focusing on county, and it's a question mark. These are just questions.
Yeah.
And they, they'll have a debate about whether that's a good idea, a bad idea. But it's important to have those questions out there framed in a way that I think is positive. So that's a good deal. What else have they been doing? They're collecting a lot of data. They're going to do some map. I mean, their main charge is to map districts. And the SU filters into this discussion because so many districts are organized as SUs. And then other folks are saying, well, maybe you could have the SU supervisory district, and they don't have to be town districts. They could be, sort of existing districts like ours in Addison County. So a larger entity, but still overseen, and trying to keep that local trust, that community trust. So those are good questions.
So I woke up in the middle of the night last night.
Oh, well, we all do these days.
There's enough stuff going on to confuse anyone.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what? We're not asking the kids. When and where do we get any input on what the kids think would be a good idea?
Yeah. So that's and parents and communities.
Yeah.
It's I was one thing I actually got enacted. I was contributing to a lot of things, but one of the things I put out there when Act 73 was being debated was the notion that communities need a voice before a decision is made, especially around closing their community elementary school. And I laid out I had a bill, I had, all sorts of, how I like to write. And it talked about those specific issues, that you need to ask students, parents in the community, what are the values there? What do you really value? And is your education going to be improved by going from a smaller school to a bigger school? That's really important.
Yeah.
And I think that has to be done sort of along with the financial issues. I understand the financial issues, but if you don't at the same time focus on education values and what students and parents and communities are thinking about, I think you're setting yourself up for a rough road, let's put it.
So how do we do that? What should I do as a journalist, or what should communities do, or school districts do to actually involve the public and gain an understanding of what people want?
So there are two issues there around community voice, I think. I was talking a little bit about closing a school. And my vision had been, okay, the district thinks that they should close a school. And my vision is they put together some data and explanation as to why they think that. And then they go out to students, parents, and community
And,
show
and
that.
and we know that when you do that, if we were to put a proposal on the table to close Starksboro schools, like was done a number of years ago, yeah, you get community involvement, you get a huge number of people come out, but that's what do you do? Keep proposing different things until you have a proposal that nobody comes out and complains about? It seems to me that's a kind of a backwards way. How do we get positive input from people
Correct.
in terms of what they want to see these new districts look like?
Well, then we go to districts versus schools. So now
Or schools.
on the schools, I think you can't get the cart before the horse. You have to start out by saying or showing that you think your kid's education is going to improve.
Yeah.
If you start it from the other end, I think people are going to be, they're going to be in defensive mode, defensive crouch.
Right.
But if you start by having people think, what sort of situation is going to be best for your kid's education, that's a positive sort of question. And you get the framework of discussion, I think, is a lot more. It's still going to be emotional. I understand that, but at least you started out in a much better sense. On the district or SUSD kind of thing, I'm sort of still thinking through that.
Yeah.
But I guess at my core, rather than having the state say, okay, you guys in Addison County, you're going to be in a supervisory district, I would ask folks to choose, laying out in a very positive, very straightforward way, if what the pluses and minuses are. And I can't figure out, how they would go about choosing, but, instead of having a top-down kind of thing, have people. This education is hugely important for everybody here.
I think it is. Yeah.
They think about it. It's not like they don't know anything about this. They might not know a lot of the details.
So you're
ask them.
question. So you're sort of implying what I'm hearing is that you could have a different sort of structure in Addison County or in western Vermont than you have in northeastern Vermont. So you could have a supervisory union type of structure that the northeast seems to, or eastern side seems to favor, or you could have a district, more of a district structure here on the western side of the state. Is that what you're thinking? Is that we shouldn't, or we have the opportunity to have a variety in the state rather than everybody's going to follow the same pattern?
Correct. Because I think different parts of the state are at different spots, just in terms of their communities, socially, and how they've been accustomed to having their kids educated. I wouldn't be surprised if some areas or some counties would say, yeah, we're perfectly comfortable with a supervisory district. That's not a problem for us. And like you say, the eastern part of the state, I kind of think of what we've been talking about for Addison, you and I have been talking about, and I guess Ms. Kinsley too, for Addison County is maybe a hybrid kind of structure where you accept the fact that you don't have all the little towns having their own school districts. You've already merged into a supervisory district, but you don't want to take that next step because there might be some real pitfalls there.
Yeah.
And so you create that's why I call it hybrid supervisory district.
So that would play out in Addison County. That might play out that there's one superintendent for the entire county that includes the tech center, and Lincoln for that matter. And then under that superintendent for the entire county, you have the same school districts that we currently have. And those school districts will do all of the local decision making and spending, for that matter, because we're going to move to more of a fixed dollar amount, right?
Foundation formula.
So they make all those kinds of
That'll be an
decisions.
interesting decision, won't it be?
Yeah.
Where are they going to peg that amount?
Well, yes, it's sort of back to the future, isn't it? I mean, it's a series of foundation formulas that eventually failed and resulted in the Supreme
Correct.
Court decision. So, yeah, to transition to financing for a minute, to the notion that we can design a foundation formula that lots of other states in the nation use that won't eventually devolve into the same sort of Supreme Court decision that we got with Brigham, that somehow will remain relevant and affordable and equitable across the state.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge. It was interesting. I don't know if you followed this aspect of the enactment of Act 73. And it was a long session, right?
Yeah, it was.
But it really wasn't until about the last 3 weeks in the session that some of the higher spending districts realized they were going to lose a lot of money, or they could.
Yeah.
And there was some data circulating from state, folks, talking about, okay, you're in X district and you're going to lose 15% of your budget.
Yeah.
And it didn't really happen until the end of the session. And a lot of these folks says, no, I'm not going to vote for that. So it'll be really interesting. I think the hopeful side, it's summertime, it's fall, it's beautiful weather. So the hopeful side is that unlike other states, in how they've handled the foundation formula, that fiscal times are tough, we're going to drop it down.
Right. Yeah.
And we did that in Vermont.
Yeah.
I think the hopeful thing is that we have a Vermont Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And they've said this is important, and we have a constitutional principle about the Common Benefits Clause.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the difference.
When we start talking about money, the notion is we're going to save a lot of money. And some people's notion is we're going to save a lot of money, or that's the goal. So we have, and they talk about disparity in terms of equity. We have high spending districts and we have low spending districts.
Yeah.
Now, if we save zero money, if we just spend the exact same amount, and we level fund and bring these together, we bring equity in, that would mean the high spending districts would spend less and the low spending districts would spend more, right? To get to a median,
Get taxed for it too.
And so if you do that on a spending basis, you're going to have a bunch of high spending districts that are going to lose funding, right? And that's just to get to no increase. If you're saying we're going to save $180 million, which is in some people's notions of what this is going to do, you're going to bring the high spending districts down to what the low spending districts are spending.
Or somewhere in between, or whatever.
Pretty darn low in order to say you're not going to do a median, because if you do a median, you're not saving any money, right? So it has to be below the median to save money.
It remains to be seen whether we're going to actually reduce. We talk about organizations and systems and how you govern yourself, but in my talking with folks around in the district, it's all about property taxes. Right?
Yeah.
They definitely care about how education is provided, but what's really been hot recently is, number one, the increases. But beyond the increases, I don't think we're seeing much of an increase. Beyond the increase, it's just people say, geez, this is really expensive.
So what's happening is that I think in many districts, including ours, the tax increase this year is going to be zero or even less than zero.
We got some CLAs. There's some been.
I know there's a lot of stuff.
That's always squirrely.
But minimal, right? The school districts work really hard to bring the budget down so that the tax rate is close to zero.
And the governor put in, and the legislature put in $118 million
to facilitate that.
to facilitate, to buy down the property tax rate.
Right. So citizens aren't going to be all that upset, are they, about property tax, although there's no increase in property taxes?
I think, from what I'm hearing, I think people are going to be happy, or if they know what the tax bill is, they're happy there hasn't been an increase. But I would say that there's still a lot of people who say it's just, it's still too high.
Okay.
And can't we do this for a little less money?
So what school districts like ours are doing is they're cutting programs
I know.
in order to accomplish that.
I know.
Is what the public really saying? Is the message really, don't do anything about our districts, leave them just the same. We don't need all that fancy programming. Cut the programming down and spend less money. That's equitable, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not what I'm hearing.
No.
I'm just hearing at a very gut level, property taxes, even if they didn't increase a whole lot this year, are still too high. I think that there are all sorts of opinions about why that is. Maybe there's some people say, oh, we don't need this program, we don't that. The unfortunate thing about, I see as most of the cost drivers in terms of how much we spend on from the education fund, and therefore how much, what our property taxes look like, are cost drivers that are basically beyond the control of a local district. I'm talking about health insurance. I'm talking about just general inflation. God bless the teachers, but we live in a market where, we're going to have to pay teachers, and that's a huge expense. The other thing is, to me, there was a couple of aspects. I saw some data saying that statewide, we increased the number of school employees by 700 across the state. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. And this sort of thinks about an idea that I've been trying to talk to people about, and I get some positive feedback, which is there's a lot of stuff that we're paying for out of the education fund. And we've never really taken a and a lot of mandates that we have from both regulatory and statutory. And we haven't really taken a top to bottom look. And this would be a good time to do it. And it's not just draconian, cut this, cut that. These are all they were all included in the ed fund spending for a reason, because people thought it was a good idea. But maybe now is a good time to step back a little bit and ask, is everything we're doing essential?
Yeah.
Absolutely essential. Can you make it more efficient? Or, and this is the biggie, in some people's mind, and just me, that, geez, should all of this, I wouldn't call it social service spending, because, you need to have a school that functions and that helps kids that are having trouble. But the notion is it should be paid for some other way than out of our property taxes. Now it sounds easy, right? But it's not going to be easy.
No,
because
it's going to be a very tough year in the legislature.
It's going to be a very tough year budget-wise.
Yeah.
But it's still a fair question, I think.
Yeah. We only have a couple minutes left. So I'd just like to spend that time talking about what's happening locally. What's our school board doing? Are they looking at a countywide system? Are they having discussions? Where are we at as a school district?
So I'd encourage you to try to reach out to Erin Jipner, the chair. She's good, very good chair. It's a very difficult time for school boards everywhere. So we're deep into the weeds, and there are a lot of different viewpoints. But recently, some folks have put before the board a resolution around some of these issues. Um, and I really kind of see it as a way to authorize Aaron and the vice chair, Mike Dash, who's another good guy, to reach out to the other districts around this notion of, can we do this, can we get together, can we get a consensus on something like an Addison district, and try to fashion it in a way that there's a consensus about that. And that resolution passed recently.
Oh,
So
great.
that was great. That was good. The other part of that resolution had to do with honoring commitment in the Articles of Agreement about having a vote before school closed, and that was passed too. So that's that. In terms of the timeline for some of these things, the budget, we had a very interesting discussion, and I'll wait to see what the minutes. It was getting late. So the minutes will better reflect what the timeline is. But my sense is that folks wanted to. So right now there are a bunch of options. I'm running late, aren't I? There are a bunch of options on the table for changing how we use our elementary schools. And we have some real tough financial issues. And those decisions about what we do with elementary schools was kind of getting wrapped up into how we develop our FY27 budget.
Yeah.
And my sense was that people were starting to think last night that might be an unrealistic timeline. And we're going to have to work on our FY27 budget, right? But then, a longer term version might need to wait until, after you get that knocked off.
So it's exciting to hear that our school board is looking forward and looking for opportunities given the pressures at the state level and this redistricting board. I'm hopeful that other districts around the state are having similar conversations and looking for their communities and their district, what are possibilities moving forward in terms of sort of not preempting, but maybe having some pieces in place, some discussions going on that can be brought to the legislature in a timely manner so that the legislature begins to see what regions of the state are thinking about their futures. So,
That's spot on. That's what I'd like to see. I really would.
Yeah.
And not trying to prejudge. I mean, I have my own views about stuff, but not trying to prejudge those discussions with other districts in Addison County.
Right.
But just give them some support, give them some, some momentum, and telling our board and the other boards, it's okay to have this discussion.
Yeah.
It's important to have this discussion,
Right.
and so I'm hopeful about that.
Great. Well,
and I'm very hopeful about the board. You should touch bases with Aaron and Mike. They're good people, and they can probably offer even more than I've been trying to share.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and helping us understand what's happening in the world of education. It's a big deal.
It is.
We all, I think, care about our kids. We also care about our wallets and the balancing those two, being able to pay taxes and have good education are important. So thank you for your service, and thanks for coming to the show.
Well, it's always fun.
Yeah,
I
great.
enjoy it.
And that's it for this edition of Sharpe Takes. Stay tuned. Let us know who you'd like to hear from and what topics you'd like to hear about. Thank you very much for tuning in.